I mean, you're not going to record from that angle, right? Like, that's not an angle. That's no angle to be dealing with the mic.
Hi, I'm Andrei.
And I'm Alli, and this is
The Love is Blind podcast. Welcome.
Yes, we are here with a fresh batch of episodes. Today we're going to be doing season 6, episode 7. The
Titled Silence Speaks Volumes.
And the description is...
As their dreamy vacation comes to an end, the couples have heart-to-hearts before returning to Charlotte and entering a new phase in their relationships. Very exciting.
Very, very exciting. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder to please subscribe if you like this content. Follow us on Instagram. Give us 5-star review ratings, 5 stars only, as we know. That's the implicit contract you do agree to by listening to this. And we also want to thank a few people.
So folks who have already messaged us or sent comments on the Love is Blind podcast Instagram, which you can find that at Love is Blind podcast. And there were some folks who, on the one hand, thank you for pointing out some technical difficulties that we had on episode 6. Thank you so much for pointing those out so that we could get it fixed. But then there were
that.
some of the folks that sent us really nice and supportive comments.
Yeah, saying that you're happy we're back. We have something from, looks like Born Earth. And then what I want to say is probably to Paula Scott, although could be Top Alascott.
Topala Scott.
Shout out.
I think it's Topala Scott.
We love engaging with you, and it's really nice to hear from you. So thank you.
Yeah, and also we got some really nice reviews on Apple Podcasts from Nina of 9, which I really hope is a reference to 7 of 9, because I'm a Trekkie, and Alli and I actually host a Star Trek trivia night.
Fun facts about us.
Fun fact about us, yeah. And also a really nice and sweet review from Why So Loud. So thank you so much. If you want your name mentioned on the podcast, why don't you join them by giving us a 5-star review or, answering one of the Q&A questions on Spotify. If you're using Spotify, they ask you, how was the show? Or now you can find us on YouTube Music, where you can leave reviews as well. Really, in any place.
Anywhere. In your dreams. Walking down the street.
Tell your friends about us.
Smile on every child's face.
Yeah. Because ultimately, these truly make our day. Like when we got the comments from these folks, Alli and I have been rereading them. We don't even have that many, but we just keep rereading the same ones because it makes us feel so good.
Totally. Yeah. So thank you again. We appreciate you. And with that in mind, let's dive into, I always say, let's dive in. Let's begin our discussion of Silence Speaks Volumes.
Silence Speaks Volumes. What a genre episode. They really leaned into that. Mm-hmm.
So we are with them still in the DR. And it's, the last episode was where they had that, I don't know, what is it, a barbecue? That gathering on the beach where a lot of fighting happened. So there were those cliffhangers as we walk into this episode where we see the couples just engaging. And we see Jimmy and Chelsea. They seem to be doing better. He's apologizing again. And she appreciates that apology.
Yeah. I mean, look, as dramatic episodes go, episode 6 certainly left us feeling as though like most of the couples were having some form of almost irreparable damage or some sort of turning points of like everything has been going well until now and now that's it. But this is one of the first, instances that we're seeing in this episode, and, spoiler, we're going to see a bunch of this, where it seems like there's repair happening. And that's pretty cool. Look, I'm not going to say that from my perspective, everything that was going on in season 6 between these two was hunky-dory from both sides in every way. But look, if it's working out for them and they're having an honest conversation about it and able to just seemingly be into each other and wanting to move forward and happy, power to them, you know?
Yeah.
Say more, please.
In theory, I'm on board because I love repair and that's important. I thought that her reaction to what happened at that gathering was very disproportionate to what actually happened, and the way that they had, y'all can hear in my episode 6 take, but I thought she did not handle that conflict well. And so I'm glad that they're making up, but it seems like he's doing a lot of apologizing and she's not taking any accountability for her contribution. So I don't know. I didn't like it. I wish that it had been more two-sided. It's not my relationship, so if that's working for them, great. But I feel like Jimmy was a little crucified, and there's not really an accountability from Chelsea. So I don't know. Again, oblivious Jimmy, I don't know that matters as much to him as it would to me. I think he's probably happy that like things are good again. Great.
Yeah.
You know, but it just, to me, it seems like there's a dynamic being set up where he has to do a lot of apologizing. And I think that'll be challenging long term.
Yeah. I guess naive me, I didn't actually think that this would happen again, but of course it's gonna happen. It was like they got over it, and as long as they're both okay with how it turned out, that's fine. But you're right, this is setting up a dynamic that could potentially recur again and again. And I think that at face value for this one instance, I think I was kind of on board with, if Jimmy's, he's kind of saying, I'm sorry, and they're both able to move on, then cool. But yes, I hadn't really thought about it long term, and that's why I'm not a therapist.
You heard. Yeah, no, it's not, you're not like wrong. I mean, you're right that they did make up. It seemed, if it's working for them, great. It's just, I'm just writer. No.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, we'll see. It's not the end of the world. I would have liked it more if she had said, I think I maybe overreacted to.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, and like anything.
I guess we don't get that. Yeah.
And
as far as we see.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll pick up with them later, because in the meantime, we go over to Brittany and Kenneth. And they are talking about Kenneth's conversation with AD, where AD was inquiring about, can Brittany really handle having black children? And so they're having a big conversation about that.
Yeah.
And it seems like it goes actually pretty well.
It is going pretty well. I hadn't realized, maybe this had been presented before, but the fact that, Brittany says that she's dated black men before, and which is something that honestly, from Kenneth's experience, he has not dated white women before. So, this is a newer experience to him, but it has a lot more, it's going to be covering a lot more sensitive issues when it's coming on Brittany's half, right? So, it is, encouraging in some way that she has been, she knows how to approach these conversations well, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that she's had that experience before. And this is not something, like, she doesn't kind of come at it by being like, what is she talking about? What could she possibly mean by that?
Yeah.
I think she understands kind of where AD is coming, and giving her also the benefit of the doubt, in the sense that AD was just trying to kind of say, like, I just want you two to be aware of this. So yeah, but I do think that it's going to, their families, particularly Kenneth's family, it sounds like, are maybe going to have a harder time with Brittany, and his friends, at least according to him. And it's something that I don't know if he had really given much thought to before his conversation with AD. And I think Brittany, almost it seems as though she had kind of already registered that, yeah, that's going to be a thing, and Kenneth had not really done as much. Right.
I think I agree with your take. Yeah, I don't know if I want to add much. She's been there before, so she's gone through it. Her family has adjusted. He hasn't gone through that. Doesn't seem like he's really thought about it. And Brittany has a bit of like we're just going to power through till getting good. And I could see that there's there's pros and cons to that. Like, on the one hand, having that strength to get through to the other side, I think, is really important. On the other hand, it has the, I'm sure, unintended effect of not leaving as much room for Kenneth to speak about, like, maybe his complicated feelings that are coming up in the process.
Right.
But, like, I do think that she would do the work to figure out, like, what are the conversations I should be having? What are the fucking hair care products I need to be aware of? Like, what are the ways that I need to show up differently? I believe that she would do that.
Yeah, definitely.
I wish it were a little bit more on Kenneth's mind.
But man, do we see later on that he seems to...
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know.
A little distracted.
Kind of how he is at the end of the episode puts some of this into context,
right,
you know?
Exactly.
Like,
definitely.
He's just in his own inner world, and yeah, the idea of connecting with somebody else is not really available. It seems like he does a lot of escaping, and so it makes sense that he hasn't thought about how will this relationship fit into the larger context, because he is not really oriented that way. Yeah, you know?
Yeah, like, I certainly see that.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Yeah, in the meantime, we move over to Laura and Jeremy, who seem to be made up.
Yeah, and for the first but not the last time in this episode, Jeremy surprises me by being accountable for his emotions and being emotionally aware in a way that I did not expect from this character.
We expected nothing.
I had no expectations, and the fact that he is kind of starting off by saying, like, hey, I handled that very poorly. I, in the moment, kind of shut down. I isolated myself and kind of thought that I didn't, that I just needed to get out. And a lot of it was because he was... I didn't really know how to interpret him wanting to leave the other night. Honestly, I couldn't figure out what the emotion, like, where was his anger at her? Was his anger at himself? Like, what was the deal, So it was interesting to see this scene where he's essentially saying, I felt bad and I didn't handle this well.
Yeah.
And he kind of didn't handle it well,
No. True.
So
she didn't handle it great either.
No, but the fact that he's admitting kind of how it went wrong, and also listening to her kind of saying how it affected her, and kind of taking that in. So it was it was oddly refreshing and surprising to see this from our boy Jeremy.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good side of him that came through. There's a I'm always conscious of like not wanting to jump to diagnosing because I don't know them really. It's everything is edited. There's a neurodiversity thing happening here, I think, though. And part of it is emotional regulation skills, you know, and he seems to get flooded and act out. And then when he can come back to a state of, you know, not, like the social engagement level in polyvagal, that he's able to reflect, but there needs to be that time. And when he's in the moment, he's just flooded and dysregulated, and it doesn't take as much for him to get dysregulated, I think. So, but the flip side, if I'm right about my theory, is that like you can have a lot of empathy and understanding too. And some of the rest of the things that we see from him where he is empathetic and pretty intuitive, I think are part of that too. You know, it's like everything is just more immediate, the good and the bad, you know? And yeah, I'm happy that they have that conversation. It seems like Laura's happy that they have that conversation. All of the couples are doing better than their first night on the beach being pumped full of booze.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's nice that they're doing better.
Yeah, although Laura does say that last night she would have said 100% yes to them being married, and this morning it was she's not sure.
Yeah, that was ambiguous timing. I interpreted that as her saying
before
like,
this conversation,
before the fight, she would have said yes, and then after the fight, it gave her a pause.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I okay. I see. The
I don't know for sure, but that's
that
how
makes
it
more
made sense to me.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. Because when it was the other way, it was like after the fight, you're all in, and now
Yeah.
you're apologizing. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then we go back to Amy and Johnny, who are just, yeah, still feeling each other.
Yeah, they seem to be getting along. It's, you know, it's funny how I went into this being like they're the strongest relationship, and I don't necessarily see that anymore. Like they seem to be getting along. They seem to almost have this like cute kind of like, oh, I have a kind of a crush on you sort of situation. And but there's this like kind of like continual distance between them. And I'm not even talking about like physical, but just like they seem to be kind of half leaning in and kind of half leaning out of the relationship that they're in. They're having a great time. I think they're enjoying each other's company. But I think they're both like, they both seem to have a bunch of concerns, right? About childcare, about kind of Johnny kind of fitting in with her family. And yeah, it is interesting to see them kind of spend more time together, because we've seen kind of little of them so far, it feels like.
Yeah, I agree. They're into each other, but there's like, I think what you're describing is a kind of hesitance. Yeah. And I see that too. Like if I compare them to the Love is Blind royalty of Lauren and Cameron, or I would even say Brett and Tiffany. I don't get that same knocking it out of the park vibe with them. Although I do think that they're compatible. It's almost like they're both continually surprised to be into each other.
Yeah.
You know? And when we find out later that they haven't had sex, it maybe explains a little bit of like the physical hesitation around each other.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't want to just put it all, I guess, on that physical intimacy, right? Like,
I do. No.
Okay. Because, I mean, it is true that by the end of this episode in particular, a lot of the other couples seem to be pretty touchy-feely in public, which is, you know, again, not to say that PDA is like an indicator of the strength of a relationship, but it certainly helps.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that it makes them stronger or not stronger. I'm just saying when in that scene I see them having some physical distance, and maybe that's part of it.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, they seem to be a strong couple, just not top LIB
Not
strong.
top. Yeah.
Yeah.
We then move on to Kenneth and Brittany. And the first of the scenes that our editors, I think they just had an idea, because I imagine that throughout all of the filming of this, there have been many, many moments where some of the couples have had silence in between them, right? And they've chosen to include some of these silences in this particular episode. So we see a particularly long silence between Kenneth and Brittany.
Yeah, it's awkward.
It just kind of goes on for a while until we hit on dolphins. And then we have a really random conversation about how Kenneth was briefly in love with dolphins and had a keychain that was a dolphin before he threw it. Like we learned so much about dolphins and Kenneth in a short amount of time. The dolphin he met was named Ken. He kissed Ken. He had a keychain, but he no longer has that keychain, and he would totally do it again. It has changed his life. He fell in love with dolphins. So I thought that was pretty funny, especially after the long silence that they had.
Oh, yeah.
And then we move on to the scene at the front of the boat where they're kind of, now just kind of chilling, having a little snack. And we have this conversation about physical touch, where I think it's a little bit of a bid from Brittany, because she puts her hand on him, and then I think what she would have liked is if she got more physical touch from Ken, right? And rather than asking it like that, she kind of asks it like, is this okay? Do you like this? Right? So she's just like initiating the conversation by kind of approaching it in a different way. And it's clear that he's into it, and that actually probably they would both enjoy having some physical touch. And he says that he was afraid that he didn't want to smother her, right? So I thought that was interesting how I thought it was a very nice approach on her part of like broaching this subject. Maybe not quite as direct as it could have been, but in a way that was like sweet, you know?
Yeah, I think that goes basically well. I'm having this experience rewatching this. I can't help but reflect at the end of the episode and his involvement with his phone, which I know we just talked about, but it also is putting this into context for me, Right. Like
that he normally spends a lot of time looking down.
Right. Not engaging with other people, and it makes sense why he wouldn't feel compelled to maintain conversation. It makes sense why he wouldn't be as much paying attention to the physical. Although I understand what he's saying is that that's a very person specific thing. But when we had just seen this and there was no context like that, it was sort of like, oh, okay, how much of this is like editing? And it still very well could be, but having now seen the degree of engagement with his phone, it's making me think that less of it is.
Right.
He really could just be a kind of checked out dude, which I guess that's why you see your people not on vacation all the time, right?
Yeah.
To get a sense of them. But we'll see. The jury's out.
Yeah.
On how they're going to be.
And we then move on.
Yeah, Clay D.
Clay D.
We have the second of Silence Speaks Volumes, where they're having what seems like a nice time, and then he's like staring off into the distance, and then he
Well, I mean, we go through a lot of phases with this particular moment of silence, right? We go through the soup where she seems to be a little bit taken aback. But look, ain't nothing with lifting a bowl of soup and drinking it sometimes, okay?
I know. Her eyes are
sometimes
they're giving vibes.
Sometimes it's good soup. But yes, she is not having it.
Yeah, assuming that expression really is in response to what he's doing with that soup.
As opposed to, edited from some other
Uh-huh.
moment, because it is very, very possible. Right.
She's not having it. I mean, and that he does really wreck that soup.
Yeah.
And then he like puts all the plates away in this it's like I'm glad he's putting the plates away, but that was a lot.
I mean, I think the fact that it's all, in this particular case, the fact that it's all happening over a background of no conversation, that it is like the action. First of all, he says, I'm going to stare at the ocean for a while. And then he immediately proceeds to not do that. And in complete silence begins piling all of the food up. It's honestly, as a bit of like, if an actor were to do this in a show, I would be like, wow, that's a really cool choice.
Yeah, that's a good acting choice. Nope, that's his real life personality choice.
Yeah, and AD just kind of watches it all happen.
Are you going to talk to me now? Are you going to talk to me now?
Exhales into the ocean. And then he kind of opens up about some anxiety that he's having. And we learn more about this at the end of the episode. In a much longer sort of like, I was gonna call it a dialogue, but it's kind of a speech.
Soliloquy. It's
a soliloquy from Clay. It is him kind of expressing that he's unsure whether all of this works. He's simultaneously saying 100% into you, and also, I hope everything goes okay. I hope I don't mess up.
Yeah, marriage is a big deal. Yeah. Marriage.
But yeah, he seems very specific. I mean, we find out later that what's going on is that he seems to be afraid of, like, can I be monogamous?
Yeah.
That's kind of what he's saying.
At least in part, yeah.
Yeah. But, like, I guess with the fact that, in this conversation, all he says, I'm afraid of messing everything up.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't understand necessarily what that means. And it seems to be the case, what we find out later, that what he means is, I'm afraid of cheating.
Cheating on you.
I'm afraid of the fact that even though I feel 100% in, I'm afraid that that's not going to last.
I think cheating is a part of what he's afraid of. But I think that's one of the things.
Yeah.
He does seem to be opening up in general a lot more than AD.
Yeah.
And this episode for me, I was reflecting on AD comes across as cool, calm, and collected and wise all the time. We don't really see a lot of her about what's really going on for her. I think she must be very guarded, I'm guessing she probably had to be pretty strong her whole life. And had to be the one having it all together. So I'm really wanting to see AD open up.
Yeah.
Because I know there's stuff there, because in the past episodes she was sharing, that one time we did kind of see her open up was she was sharing like she can have it all, but she believes she can't have love.
Right.
So I think that is very much present in this last scene where Clay is sharing like, oh, I don't want to mess it up. And she's like, oh my God, what are you thinking? Like, you're going to mess it up. And it ends up turning back to Clay. But I think there's a very important moment for AD there where you see some of her own insecurity come up. And yeah, I'm wanting her. I think I said this before, is that like my concern is that she's going to be doing a lot of the emotional supporting for Clay. And I don't really know that that's going to be so reciprocated. I would really like to see it be reciprocated. I would really like to see someone who's going to be strong enough to hold her so she doesn't have to be the one that's doing all the holding.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I actually completely see that what you're saying. It hadn't really clicked until you started to talk about it, that, she's kind of keeping all of her cards to herself in that way. Kind of being strong, and like, in quotes, just being strong and not actually
having to be.
Yeah.
Then we come back over to Kenneth and Brittany.
Yeah, we have a sort of like morning montage.
Your reaction to this was really funny, I thought.
we have a morning montage of everyone, and we begin. The first one, is Brittany kind of walking around being like, I love Ken. It's so great. Look how neat she is. And then she points to a pile of stuff.
We had to watch this several times.
I had to rewind because I was like, did she just point to a pile of just randomly arranged like cosmetics and like bathroom items? Like, not like, I'm not saying that looks disorganized, but if anyone were to point to that and be like, how would you describe this? My word wouldn't be, look how neat. Look how neat. It's so neat.
Yeah, we're paused on it right now. We can see that the lotion is askew, and so is the chapstick, and
yeah. Like, again, genuinely, like, there's nothing, like, it doesn't look messy. It just doesn't look neat.
He's also been there for like, a few days, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Anybody can just have a few askew items after a few days.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. And then we get Johnny and Amy. They're talking, they're being cute, that, the night before, Amy had already flossed when the dessert came, or like when they had dessert. And I thought that was a cute little interaction. And we were just like, oh, you already flossed, girl, like whatever. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah. And then Clay D saying he wants to brush his teeth. Yeah.
He has
just cute
vicious
stuff.
breath.
Yeah. Just like the couple's getting along.
We have the ring
it's nice
on
that they
Laura.
have moments where they get along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ring on Laura, and then we have the last one's Jimmy, kind of making some mimosas and failing and being weirdly cute. Yeah. Again, it's weird, like, to be like, okay, I didn't realize that you guys were doing so well, but you seem to be doing well, or you're recording really specific doing well videos. Yeah.
Yeah, people seem to be getting along better than they were. And then we move over to what I think is probably their final day, where they're all hanging out again and basically talking about how well they're all doing.
Yeah, and who's having sex.
Yep, who's having sex. Chelsea seems really into Jimmy. I thought they were all having sex. Yes.
Well, we knew that Brittany and Ken weren't going to.
Yes.
And I had genuinely assumed that Johnny and Amy had, just because of the amount of chemistry and like the sort of like videos that they were showing, like mornings waking up and like, but I guess they were just like being close and not like, so yeah, everybody except Johnny and Amy and Brittany and Ken are having sex. Not okay. Not that we're keeping track. But
you come here for the hot takes.
Yes.
The food in the pods.
Yeah, and the sound effects from Alli.
And the commentary on he's not that clean, Brittany.
He's not that clean, Brittany.
All right. We have Jimmy talk with AD and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, that was awkward for me." It seems like they have a good conversation. I read online some people commenting that they thought that Jimmy and AD were flirting in the last episode. I didn't get that read.
I didn't get that read either. I think he was awkward and was trying to say like, hey, that made me sound like an absolute awful person. Right. I need to like come talk to you and try to be human for a second. And
it's good that they have that repair.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of Laura and Jeremy. We get a little bit of Chelsea and Amy. We get a bunch of like different sort of like combinations until we get to Laura and Johnny, where we find out that Johnny and Amy aren't having sex. And specifically it's because Amy's not on birth control.
Not on birth control.
Which is a wild take. specifically the wild take is the fact that he has always thought all women are on birth control.
Right.
That is a wild take, buddy. And yeah, the expectation that she has to be on birth control in order for him to feel safe proceeding with their sexual relationship is interesting.
Yeah, there's kind of like some cis white dude vibe happening.
Yeah.
He probably has encountered all women that have just that's what women take care of.
Yeah, I don't have to do anything, and they take care of that. I'm sure there's part of it that's probably like, I'm not wearing a condom. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I don't understand exactly where he's coming from, unless it's that. Because if he is thinking about the, 0.1% or however much percentage of, pregnancies that can occur from using a condom,
I don't think he's thinking about that.
I don't think he's thinking about those. I think he's just either incredibly terrified to have a child, which he does express. He does express this in the conversation with Laura. He's like, that's 100% not happening right now.
Yeah.
Or he does not want to use a condom, which is...
Or he doesn't have any.
Come on.
Oh, maybe. Who knows?
You don't think Netflix gives them a bucket? I don't know.
Maybe.
I would assume so.
But
just a bucket of condoms from Netflix.
Know from the preview, the little teaser that they did at the end of episode 6, it seems like the conversation about kids is going to come up again.
Yeah, it seems to be the big thing, right?
We'll see what happens.
Right.
But then we have our next cis white dude, Jeremy, also apologizing to AD. I'm like, this girl,
yeah, she
has had to take some crap, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he apologizes to her about the bean dip joke.
Uh-huh.
But then the conversation, I mean, because that part of it is, it's nice. It's nice that he has the wherewithal to know to do that. I don't know if Laura was like, you should go talk to AD. But the part that took me by surprise, and this is part 2 of me being surprised by Jeremy, was when he kind of on his own told Laura about how, told AD how Clay is sometimes quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And how he sometimes just needs to have a little bit of a moment to himself when he is kind of overwhelmed or when he's inside his head a little bit. And it makes AD feel so much better about her interactions with Clay, I think, because she has noticed some of these silences and probably has interpreted them as being like problems with their relationship or, ways in which he is unable to connect with her. So I think she feels so relieved to hear that this is just this is how Clay processes and this is how Clay kind of deals with things. So yeah, it's I was surprised that he noticed that about Clay, that he thought to communicate that to AD in a way that was really nice and gentle and helped her feel better about this interaction that she's having with Clay. Yeah,
that was a really sweet and attuned thing that he said. Yeah. And the dude's got his good parts. He's just got a lot of bad parts too.
He's just a little bit of a boy.
No bad parts. Yeah, he seems like he's 7 years away from really being what Laura needs. And she's got her own work to do too. I mean, she's not getting a pass, but I do think the immaturity will be a big deal.
Yeah. I thought you were about to say he's about 7 years away from being 16. But
he's a 9-year-old boy. He's a 9-year-old boy in a Hawaiian shirt.
Yes.
But yeah, it's nice. It seems to put things into perspective for AD, and I think she does need that. Which again, she was holding everything close to her chest, but it sounds like it was really bothering her that he can be silent. We then have Amy talking about how her family might have a tough time accepting Johnny because of the speed. I feel like that's sort of standard Love is Blind fare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a conversation that we've seen before in Love is Blind, and it's the like, how is my family going to react, because they were not supportive of this to begin with.
The other half of this conversation is Jeremy sharing that he chose Laura because they could have tough conversations too, but he's really looking forward to meeting Sarah Ann. Amy has a reaction to this. She's like, I'm not going to say anything. Like, she's not liking this conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, I see where she's coming from. Like, it's dangerous to be talking like this.
Yeah.
I also see why he thinks he's being fine, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be friends. She seems like a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. Amy is not into that conversation for sure.
Yeah. I thought her reaction of I'm just going to shut my mouth. I thought it was maybe like a little strong. I don't know. I don't have terribly strong feelings about it. It made me wonder if she didn't like Sarah. You know?
Maybe.
But I don't know.
Very possibly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Then finally, I think our last scene before we leave, I'm not sure about that. I might be wrong about that. But is we have Jimmy and Chelsea talking about their favorite times and least favorite times. And Jimmy's, I think, pretty adorable story about his taquitos.
Yeah, wanting to finish the taquitos before anybody else saw them.
He cut his mouth.
He bit his lip and then was bleeding. Just spitting blood the whole time. I thought that was really adorable. It was also a really adorable way of like saying like, no, the argument we had like made us stronger. I was like, okay, buddy. Okay. All right. That was a strong move. Strong statement there.
Yeah. And she's liking it too. What do you think of them overall as a couple after this episode?
Chelsea and Jimmy?
Yeah.
Surprisingly a lot more. I mean, like I feel like they're a stronger couple from that sense. I still don't think that they're. I still think Jimmy's gonna have a reaction when he meets Jessica.
I think you might be right about that. I think Chelsea's gonna have a reaction, even if Jimmy didn't have a reaction, and he will have a reaction.
Yeah. But I guess I feel stronger in the sense that like it's more likely that they're going to end up at the altar, but also I don't necessarily feel about them much better than I did before. Like they're showing a very happy face together, which is fine, but it's hard to tell how much of that is genuine.
Yeah, I still see them saying no.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though they're doing better this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then actually, before we move on, how do you feel about Jimmy and Chelsea?
Same. Yeah. That they seem to not be acutely fighting, but I think there's a rocky foundation. And
yeah,
I think a lot of stuff's going to come up when they go back to not the real world, but the not vacation world. And I don't see them saying yes.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And we see some of the doubt being sown a little bit into the Johnny and Amy conversation that they have afterwards too, where Amy's kind of admitting more about her dad really not being on board with this. With this, and kind of the way he had her family had previously gotten involved in her relationships, and how she's, I think, trying to push back against that.
And they talk about pet peeves, and she doesn't have any, except he says chicken butt, which I say all the time, and I felt
attacked.
I felt personally attacked. I was like, God, I guess I'm a little irritating.
Well, first of all, you don't say it once a day.
I don't say it once a day.
You say it twice a day. I'm kidding.
I say it once a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. And we then move on to everybody's packing up. Everybody's going to move into little places together outside of the Dominican Republic.
Go back to their housing where...
To their, oh my God, when they zoom out and they show the developmental, like the housing development that they're in, it looks terrifying. I don't know why. There's an aspect of it that feels really like dystopian. Just like identical, like homes that are squeezed against each other. And
little houses made of ticky-tacky.
Yes, very much.
It's always like that, though. They always have this, like...
Sure, but I feel like they're usually like they're in like a downtown or something, but when it zooms out, it's just like, it looks like a construction site that's been recently finished with these houses. That like these are the Love is Blind homes. I'm sure that's not the case. So we cut to the apartment life of Laura and Jeremy, where we find out that they're probably going to get along just fine because Jeremy is pretty neat, and neatness seems to be a big thing for Laura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that conversation seems to go well. I think in general, the moving in seems to go well, except for
Kenneth and Brittany.
Yes.
And this scene
and
is
the phone.
Yeah,
phone gate.
This scene is hard to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, again, great editing, but also you do get the feeling that Ken was there for a long time.
Yes.
Because he changes positions. He's there for a long time as she sets up the bathroom, as she sets up she's asking him questions and he's not responding at all, or he's like giving one word like whatever, like whatever you want, I don't care.
Until he just stops responding altogether.
Yeah.
It
is tough to watch, and especially the little like cutaway talking head of Kenneth where he's like gleefully like, man, I missed my phone. I missed my phone so much. My phone is great. I love my phone so much. It was so sad to be away from my phone. And I don't know whether they got that shot before this scene with Brittany or after it, but in either case, it is damning because if it was before, then hey buddy, pay attention. And if it was after, did you not notice any of that? Whew.
Well, we know from the preview that they showed at the end of episode 6 that she has a talk with him about like, you were so different in the pods.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is part of it, if he's just like completely checked out when they're IRL,
Yeah.
Which would be really sad.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely see it happening, but I really liked Kenneth and Brittany.
Yeah, it is really sad to see. I mean, he genuinely, so far in just this like one scene, I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah, he is a very different person right now. He's behaving very differently than he had been. Definitely not the sweet Ken that we saw at the beginning of the first night where he like brought her a chair and put the slippers out for her.
Wanting to make sure we connect every night before we go to bed.
Yeah, I wonder if that Ken is going to be looking at his phone at night.
Yeah.
Also, at the end of the scene, he kind of goes like, okay, I think I'm done, which you get immediately reading as like, oh, he's finally done with his emails. He'll finally interact with Brittany. And then he goes, I'm going to go downstairs.
Yeah.
And he goes and proceeds to be, as far as I can tell, both on his phone and on the TV because he's got a little remote on his lap. So he's just like checked out.
Yeah.
He is back in his little world.
Sad.
Yeah,
leaving Brittany with a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think this is the beginning of some more to come. Yeah.
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 And then
we have Clay D.
This final scene.
Yeah. Where Clay basically opens up about how his father always cheated on his mom, and he doesn't really know of any black men, even celebrities, that haven't been unfaithful, and it worries him, and he wants to go to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fear. Yeah. And I think that's valid. Again, it's the same dynamic where AD is supporting him, and it's not so much the other way around.
Right.
So, I wish that were different. But It's really fair to have your fears come up before you're getting married. I hope they do go to counseling.
Yeah, probably a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely talks for a long time here. And, you know, like to your point, describes not having any role models of monogamy and fearing that he doesn't really know whether this is something he can do. Like like the way he says it, the concept of one girl. And it also in itself kind of tells you a little bit about his relationship history, if this is the first time he's been confronted by that. It really kind of gives an idea that previously he had not had very many committed relationships, or if he did, he didn't necessarily think of them as being monogamous, because this seems like a new concept to him. Like, man, it's really hard to think about what it would be like to just dedicate my entire life to one girl.
Yeah. Like,
to one
like he's
woman.
probably had relationships with this is maybe the first emotionally serious one.
Yeah.
He's struggling with that. So.
And I have to admit, it kind of ends weird. Like the music kind of cutting in and just kind of like cut to titles seemed sudden to me.
Yeah, this was definitely an episode that, like, this was not going to be your cliffhanger episode. you know?
No.
It was sort of like, cool, everyone's doing basically okay. There's some stuff coming up, but it was like planting seeds for stuff to come down the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we will be there with you.
Yeah, we'll be there for episode 8, which we will try to put out as soon as possible. But thank you for listening to this episode. And thank you for your time. Thank you for leaving us reviews, for giving us 5 stars, for liking our podcast, for sharing it with your friends, following us on Instagram at Love is Blind Podcast, and our Facebook group, Love is Blind Podcast.
Yep, and I did, want to bring it back just for a quick moment to the sponsorship. To just put it out there that I'm open to Coke Zero as well. Thank you.
Okay. So as soon as a Coca-Cola executive begins listening to this podcast, I'm sure this will pay off.
I'm manifesting.
Oh yeah, you do manifest.
Yeah.
You do be manifesting.
Always be manifesting.
Always be manifesting. Okay, everybody.
All right. We'll see you soon.